A deep silence now haunts the railways of Russia. Platforms that once thundered with the sound of locomotives now echo with emptiness. Trains stand still. Workers vanish. Families wait for salaries that will never arrive. And in the heart of this vast, frozen empire, Russia's largest company has collapsed. A company once too powerful to fail has just failed. The state-owned giant Russian railways, known as RZD, once symbolized Moscow's strength, endurance, and unity across 11 time zones. But now it lies in ruins, crushed under a mountain of 3.36 trillion rubles in debt. That's more than the GDP of entire nations gone, lost in a sea of corruption, sanctions, and war. And behind those numbers lies a human catastrophe of historic scale. 700,000 workers suddenly stranded, unpaid, abandoned by the very regime they served. This isn't just an economic collapse. This is a social implosion, a silent apocalypse that's spreading from Moscow to the Pacific. For years, Kremlin propaganda called RZD the pride of the nation, the steel spine of Russia, the artery that pumped life into its cities, armies, and industries. It connected the oil fields of Siberia to the ports of Vladivostok. It carried soldiers, coal, tanks, and grain. But today, this iron network has turned into a financial graveyard. The company's debt has reached levels so high that even Russian economists whisper in disbelief. Inside the glossy annual reports lies a terrifying truth. RZD is bankrupt, not officially declared, but functionally dead. The collapse didn't come overnight. It was slow, silent, and corrosive, like rust eating through steel. Years of corruption, inefficiency, and greed rotted the foundations long before the first missiles fell on Ukraine. But the war was the spark that set the structure ablaze. When Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine, the consequences rippled far beyond the battlefield. Sanctions cut Russia off from global markets, trade routes, and Western technology. RZD's most profitable business, international freight, was paralyzed. Containers piled up at ports, borders choked with wagons going nowhere. Within months, RZD's revenue dropped by billions. Freight volume alone fell by over 7%. But the real disaster was hidden in what followed. Profits collapsed by 95%. State subsidies could no longer fill the gap. And behind closed doors, Kremlin officials quietly ordered the layoffs to begin. What started as a few temporary leaves soon became mass terminations. Hundreds of thousands of loyal railway workers, engineers, mechanics, ticket clerks were told to stay home without pay. The same people who had kept the nation's blood flowing through its steel veins were discarded overnight. For these 700,000 workers, RZD was never just a job. It was life itself. Across the endless expanse of Russia, from the snows of Kaliningrad to the tundra of Siberia, RZD wasn't merely a company. It was a miniature state within the state, a shadow government that cared for its people better than the Kremlin ever did. It provided free travel across the country, low-interest housing, healthcare, even schools and clinics for employees' families. In towns forgotten by the central government, RZD's hospitals were the only functioning ones. For millions, it was the only form of social security left. But now, those hospitals are closing. The free travel cards have been canceled. The homes built with company loans are being repossessed. Entire families, 3 generations deep, are watching their world disintegrate. Children will no longer attend RZD-sponsored schools. Doctors trained in company clinics are being dismissed. And the elderly, once proud railway veterans, now face a winter with no heating, no income, and no future. This is not just unemployment. This is systemic social collapse, the unraveling of a civilization's promise. When RZD stops, Russia stops. It's not a metaphor, it's a literal truth. The company isn't just a transport service. It's the circulatory system of a country spanning 11 time zones. Coal to power plants, oil to refineries, wheat to markets, and tanks to the front. Everything moves through those tracks. The steel arteries of RZD feed Russia's economic and military machine. Now those arteries are clogged. The paralysis is spreading through the entire economy. Metallurgical plants in the Urals are shutting down due to supply delays. Factories that build tanks can't get steel. Power stations run low on coal. Ports are idling. Even Moscow and St. Petersburg, the political and industrial hearts of the country, are bleeding. Without RZD, the blood flow that keeps them alive is cut off. This is not the fall of a company. It's the strangulation of a continent. The Kremlin blames Western sanctions. But the rot runs much deeper and much older. Long before the war, RZD had become a symbol of Putin's kleptocracy. The so-called privatization of state enterprises never created free markets. It created fiefdoms ruled by oligarchs. According to research by the Wilson Center and other independent institutions, Russia's economy turned into a network of monopolies feeding the Kremlin's elite. RZD was one of the juiciest sources of cash. Infrastructure contracts worth billions were handed to friends of the regime. Subcontracting deals vanished into offshore accounts. Procurement inflated costs tenfold. The company survived not because it was efficient, but because it was constantly fed with state subsidies and rising ticket prices. A leech disguised as a locomotive. By the time the war began, RZD was already terminally ill. Putin's invasion only delivered the final fatal blow. As the economy buckled under sanctions and isolation, the company could no longer sustain its parasitic bureaucracy. The same corruption that once enriched the elite now became a noose around their neck, and now that noose is tightening. Not around the oligarchs, but around the workers who built the empire with their bare hands. The collapse of RZD has triggered a chain reaction that's turning Russia's landscape into a graveyard of ghost towns. Across Siberia, the Urals, and the Arctic North, there exist hundreds of monogorods, towns that depend entirely on a single company for survival. For decades, RZD was that lifeline. The town's hospital? RZD owned. The school? RZD built. The shops, housing, and utilities, all tied to the railway network. When RZD closes its offices, life in these towns ceases to exist. Streets grow silent. Shops shutter. Young families pack their bags and leave. Schools shut down due to lack of students. What remains are aging parents, empty houses, and cold train stations where no trains arrive. These once bustling communities, built around the promise of stability, are now disintegrating into frozen wastelands of despair. The empire Putin tried to expand abroad is now collapsing at home, one town at a time. But perhaps the most disturbing part of this story is not economic. It's political. As RZD disintegrates, reports have surfaced of a terrifying internal directive from the Kremlin. Ukrainian intelligence leaked documents showing that RZD's corporate security forces, more than 30,000 personnel, are being armed. Why would a bankrupt railway company need guns? The answer is chilling. It's not for defense against foreign enemies. It's for defense against their own people. The Kremlin fears what's coming. 700,000 furious, unemployed citizens, organized, connected, disciplined, are a ticking time bomb. Many of them are trained engineers, technicians, and veterans. The regime knows what happens when they lose hope. Putin's government has ordered RZD's internal security to prepare for civil unrest. That means one thing: the Kremlin expects rebellion. These armed guards are not to protect tracks. They are to protect the regime. They are a company militia, ready to crush protests, block strikes, and, if necessary, open fire on their own fellow workers. This is how far the Russian state has fallen, arming itself against its own people. For nearly 25 years, Vladimir Putin's power rested on an unspoken deal with the Russian people. The promise was simple: give up your political freedoms, stay silent. If you found this story eye-opening, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell icon.